Welcome to This Organized Life. If you're a mom, wife, or coffee lover seeking advice on how to reduce clutter and reclaim time, look no further than your host, Lori Palau, founder of Simply Be Organized and author of Hot Mess, a practical guide to getting organized. For a lot of people, clutter is their dirty little secret, but it doesn't have to be. Each week, we will share practical tips, chat with experts, and provide strategies on how to keep you organized. I hope that by sharing our stories, you feel a little less alone and more empowered to tackle the areas that are holding you back. So let's get started.
Everybody, and welcome to today's episode of This Organized Life. I am your host, Lori Palau, and I am so happy that you are here. If you are listening to this in real time, moms out there, wherever you are, if you have kids in school, you're probably either just started back to school or you are getting ready for the back to school, and the struggle is real. I am out of that season of life, but I feel for you. And I know that as we approach sort of the end of summer here in the US, for those of you who are listening out of the country, we're embarking on a time of transition. So I just want to give a quick little heads up that I'm going to be hosting a webinar, and I believe we'll be linking to it. I think there's going to be a little ad that we have running about it. But if you are either running your own business or you're thinking about maybe starting your own business, the fall's a great time for a lot of women entrepreneurs to kind of make that move. And so we're going to be doing a webinar for people. It's going to be specifically geared for professional organizers, but to be totally transparent, anybody that's in a service-based business could benefit from it. Totally free. And it's really about how you can monetize your own service-based business. And so we'll have links to that, and it's going to be limited to 100 people, and it's going to be next month in September. So if you're interested in that, because I know sometimes we fast forward through the commercials, I just want to let everybody know to be on the lookout for that. But okay, now that we've done all of that housekeeping stuff, I want to get into today's guest because I'm really excited for this conversation. So I'm going to be joined in 2 minutes or less with Stephanie O'Day. And Stephanie is a New York Times bestselling author of, wait for it, 10 books. I could barely write one. And she is the host of the Slow Living podcast, which just, you had me at slow living. And so what she does is she teaches strategies for busy folks who are looking to simplify the day-to-day, which really, I think that's what we're all here for. And so during the conversation, I want to touch on the whole mindset of like, how do you live an intentional life while we're in this society of bigger, better, more? And we talk about slowing down and simplifying, but then social media and just life and expectations is telling us to do otherwise. And so she's a mom also of 3 kids. She lives in the San Francisco area with her husband and their dog. And I'm really excited for this conversation. So without further ado, let me welcome Stephanie to the show. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for that intro. I'm so excited to be here because I've been watching you from afar, and
Oh,
I feel like we would absolutely be best friends. So I just really appreciate
I'm
having.
sure. Oh, you're so sweet. I really appreciate it. So I gave very, very top line overview. And I said, even before we hit record, like, bow down, 10 books is a lot. And that in and of itself takes a lot of time and emotional and like physical discipline to do. But anyway, tell our listeners about you. Give us some backstory into who you are.
Sure, absolutely. So I first got my start online in 2008 as the Crock Pot Lady. I started a year of crock potting as a New Year's resolution to use my crock pot slow cooker every day for a year and write about it online. And it took off and it went really well. And there's weird pictures of me all over the internet wearing dirty socks, which people zoomed in and told me how gross I was, hugging my crock pot. But I did it because I wanted to stay home with my babies. Um, we live in the San Francisco Bay Area. It's and crazy expensive to live here. And I really just always wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. And my husband's like, yeah, that's not going to happen. So I needed to find a legitimate way to work from home while taking care of the babies. So I had this kind of, I don't know, voice of God, divine intervention, the universe. I don't know. I thought I like the idea of a focused niche blog. Um, I was Googling chicken crock pot recipes. Maybe other people are too. So I started the site, and the idea of the New Year's resolution was I wanted to get out. I wanted to see the light at the end of the tunnel and not have to do this forever and ever. But again, divine intervention, and the universe is like, nope, psych, this is who you are now. This is your identity. So I continued to write and post crockpot recipes for quite a few years, ended up on national TV, wrote books, loved every bit about it until the Instant Pot hit the market.
Oh, and if you've listened to my show, I call it the Instapot. Did you, I don't know if you know that. For years, I guess it's not that old, but when the craze hit, I didn't realize it was called the Instant Pot. And I thought it was the Instapot, like Instagram, until I had a guest on and she's like corrected me on the air and was like, it's Instant Pot. And I was like, oh, I thought it was Instapot. So did that, I would think that just opened up another door for your business.
So you would think. So this is real life, and my house phone is ringing.
Oh, I can't even hear it. You're all
Okay,
good.
good, because the house phone hasn't rung for like 7 years.
7 years. I was going to say, since like 2011.
I'm sorry about that.
Can't even hear it. It's all good.
Okay, good. Yeah. So I liked the crock pot and still do, because I can put it on in the morning when I'm highly caffeinated and coherent. I never have to think about dinner again. It alleviated all of my decision fatigue. Dinner is in the pot by 9 a.m. I can clean the kitchen, wipe down the countertops, mop, and I never have to walk into it again. The Instant Pot or Instapot, and honestly, from an SEO standpoint, writing both online works great. My book publishers and literary agent are like, okay, Steph, now you have to translate all of your recipes to this thing. And I bought one and I goofed around with it and I hated it. It didn't fit my personality of, I want to get dinner over with while I'm still awake and then enjoy my day, enjoy my life, enjoy my babies.
Right. And that's so funny that you say that. But it makes total sense because I look at crock pots and I'm a big crock pot person. But I'm a seasonal crock pot person. I'm like a crock pot. I love sauces and stews and chilies and all of that. But I see a crock pot as a way of being proactive in your day. And it's so funny. The day that we're recording this, we just released an episode all about like meal planning and simplifying and how that's just like the bane of people's existence. And I love that. And the instant/Insta pot is for a lot of people the reactive. I'm on the fly. I didn't plan. How can I make this work? So it's using like, okay, it's a way for you to, I guess, harness your lack of preparedness or procrastination versus you being more intentional from the get-go. I don't know if that makes sense.
So it absolutely does for me, because that's how I live my life. So my body works in a way where I'm up and at 'em in the morning. I have this good amount of energy and I front load my day where I'm creative and productive. And then right around noon, I'm like, okay, now I'm done. Now I can take a nap and I can do yoga and chillax. So the Instant Pot, the idea of chopping onions at 5 p.m. when I'm already tired and cranky. When my kids were little, they were already tired and cranky. It wasn't even necessarily safe to be yielding a knife at the like witching hours. So I get it from a marketing standpoint, from a publishing standpoint. They the and by they, I'm always envisioning men in suits sitting around a table who are not in my kitchen and in my life. It made sense to them, but it just didn't to me. And so I had this kind of, I don't know, like third life crisis where I'm like, just because you can do things fast, it doesn't mean it's better. It doesn't mean you
Mm,
should. And so I started realizing that I had all these systems in place to live a purposeful life, to live a life with intention. I've always been intentional with parenting and with finances and with health, and everything has always worked in this really cohesive way. I don't want to do things fast just because they might sell. So I got fired. My the publishers and the agent are like, You're leaving money on the table. You should go for the low hanging fruit." Um, so I did a lot of beating myself up mentally for a while before I realized, you know what? I don't like being told what to do. I'm going to do my own thing.
I applaud like your integrity and authenticity to who you are and doing what you believe and putting stuff out there. And I think that that's something to be mended versus,
Well, thank you. You'll
you
have to
know,
tell my husband
I
and
was going to say,
and
I don't
his
know if that's going to pay
spreadsheet.
your mortgage. I don't know if that's going to, but
Yeah. Yeah.
so you
So now
pivoted.
I pivoted. So now I say that I write, coach, teach, and speak about all things slow living. And slow living in my mind is getting to where you want to go, but in a way that feels good in your body. So peaceful. I help people meet their personal and professional goals in a way where they don't feel like they're playing catch up, in a way that they're feeling behind, because it messes up your nervous system to constantly be rushing and feeling like you're not going to get there.
Mhm.
And that's not a nice feeling. I want gold stars. I want little rewards along the way to point out that I'm on the right track and I'm doing the right thing. And the women that I work with have the same thing. They and you're and the women you work with too, it's quite similar. It's this feeling of overwhelm, of there's too much to do and not enough time to do it. I don't even know where to start.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. So I have a question. So were you, just as you were talking, I'm always curious. So were you always somebody that was like sort of like you were talking about your energy level? And I talk about that. I talk about that in my book about what I call it your peak productivity time. You know, some people are like, I'm a night owl, I'm a morning person, I'm not a morning person. And like you were saying, you're at your peak in the morning till noon. And so that's when you need to front load all your stuff. Is that something that you were always kind of just intuitively like that? Or is that something that you developed as you got married and had kids and lived your life?
yeah. I think well, so it's really interesting because we're sort of bred in this way to fit into certain containers. And then once you are a full fledged grown up, you get to decide if they work. So I know in middle school and high school, I would get this kind of afternoon slump, and I would hate it if something that required my brain was scheduled after lunch. Like heaven help me if I have a 1 p.m. math class. It's just not going to work
Right.
for me. But I always thought there was something wrong with me. Um, and so it wasn't until I shifted into adulthood and I could take charge of myself that I just decided, instead of fighting with my natural instincts, I was going to embrace it and be like, you know what? This is literally who I am. Um,
Well, and I
I,
think that you
I
bring
like
up a
naps. So
well, but I think you bring up a good point because obviously we talk a lot about whether it's personality type or if this is just kind of like how we are. Because I too am somebody and I look back in the rearview mirror and I see like I'm at my best in the morning, not super early. Like I'm not that like wake up at 4 or 5 person. I'm like talking 7 a.m. Like
sure.
my peak productivity time, mental bandwidth is also earlier. And looking back, when I was in college, I tended to take morning classes. I'm not somebody that tends to procrastinate. It causes me anxiety to have things later and like lingering and looming over. That's how it's perceived in my mind and in my body. It's funny though, but as a mom, I see my kids and maybe they'll change, but I see their habits are more on the procrastination and we'll get to it later. And which some of them, sometimes they do, and sometimes it bites them. But do you know what I mean? And I think that it's worth for our listeners out there to have that like self-reflection of like, look at where am I? Like, am I in my best? Like, how can I? And I think that probably lends itself to the work that you're doing with what does that look like for you? What is slow living? Maybe it means having your morning be slow so that by lunchtime you can like hit the ground running versus somebody that likes to front load it so that you could take a nap in the afternoon.
Yes. Yes. Yes to everything you said. So it's interesting. I think, and especially being in the publishing world and with marketing, the hype and the hustle sells. It's so easy to not talk about honoring your body and listening to what it needs versus six-pack abs in 30 days or less. Like that's what gets people to click and what gets people to whip out their credit card. But in real life, I've had 3 babies. I don't need six-pack abs. I want to be able to, when I'm 70, to crawl on the floor with my grandchildren. I want to be able to take a random yoga and tennis class and feel good in my skin and my body. I want to garden. Like those are the things that are important to me, not six-pack abs, but it's not, I'm going to use the word sexy. It's not sexy. It's not, they want the noise and the nonsense. And social media especially is bite size, grab you really by the throat and like look at, and slow living is about reflection. I like to use the acronym for slow, which is simply look only within. So
Mm.
you know deep down inside when you're quiet and when you're in a good mood. Also, don't make decisions when you're in a bad mood. When you're in a good mood and you're calm, what feels good to do on a daily basis? If you look around your space, are you feeling calm and centered, or do you feel that frantic and frenzied thing? And then pay attention to that and then make a game plan. Because if you are in that sort of frenetic energy and you pull out the hefty bag and you dump everything and you're doing it from a place of frenzy, you're going to kick yourself when you realize like you got rid of that denim shirt that you actually really liked because you were in this like mindset of crazy, I hate everything. Also, I mean, we've all been in this same situation of when you're in that funk, you should not go get a haircut. You just should not. It's the same
Yeah.
thing.
Well, it's funny because I'll talk to people about organizing, and a lot of times, especially when I was seeing private clients a lot, by the time people call me, it's like they've stepped on the last Lego. It's
Yeah.
talk about the straw that breaks the camel's back.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I've stepped on one too many Legos. I've tripped over one too many things. And they're at their breaking point. And, when we talk about like wanting to prioritize, okay, where do you want to prioritize? And they're just like, my entire house is a disaster. And it's
Yeah.
like, you want it, and I understand, I can relate from an emotional perspective, like, that feeling of like, I just want it to all be fixed. But the practicality, which again isn't fun or sexy or, is it's a process,
Yeah.
and slow living or decluttering or whatever it's going to be, it's about building these habits, changing or modifying what might not be working. And that's uncomfortable because I think as a society, we've adapted and praised that busy, harried, overscheduled like way of life. And so the opposite of that slowing down seems counterintuitive to us. Or like I was just a guest on somebody else's show, and we were talking all about a lot of her stuff is geared towards like prioritizing exercise and physical fitness. And I said, we tell ourselves these false narratives about we're not entitled to do that. And so the thought of like, I couldn't do that because fill in the blank, it's just, it starts, I think, with a mindset shift.
It does. I spend a lot of time talking about mindset shifts, and it's interesting because there's different pockets of the self-help and I think I just stuttered there or lisped self-help
Yeah.
and personal development space where they talk about mindset, and there's like maybe this graphic image on Instagram of someone sitting in nature for 3 hours and coming to terms. But in real life, most people can't do that. So I like journaling, and I like starting my day out with intention. Um, but what my mindset and what works for me doesn't work necessarily for other people and other people's brains. And so there's literally no right or wrong way to do anything. And so for a while, the book that was on the market was The Miracle Morning, and it was written by a guy in his 20s. And like, that's not going to make sense when you're juggling school schedules and after school schedules and work, and the dishwasher overflows and the dog just vomited. Like that's most people's mornings.
Mm-hmm.
So you had said that your morning starts at 7. Um, I do happen to be an early riser. If I need to go into work, I get up at 4. And again, this is a me
I
thing.
wish I could. I mean, I guess
Yeah.
technically I could, but I wish that was a natural, more organic part of me, and it's not.
So, but what you're doing is working for you, and so you're not coming to me looking to meet your personal and professional goals and wondering why you're not there yet. So you're good.
Well, and I do want to say, and I do want to put a disclaimer out there, right, for anyone listening. That was not always. Now that I am fortunate, I'm in a season of life where my kids are grown. I don't have to get them up. I'm not worrying about school schedules. I have the flexibility.
Yeah.
There were decades, not just years, there were decades I was up at 5:30.
Yeah.
And then it was pushed back to 6 or so, but so it wasn't always, I'm just able to do that. And that's like my natural body clock is getting up around 7, and I'm able to do that now. But I recognize that wasn't always the way for me though. And I've said this before on my show, is I know that having some quiet morning time is sacred. And that has always been for me. So if I knew that my kids were getting up at 6:30 for school, I would get up at 6. If I knew that my kids were getting up at 6, I would get up at 5:30. So I always was intentional about getting up, because I knew that if I got up with them, like sprung out and didn't have that time to just have a cup of coffee,
Yes.
whether it was pray, write, read, stare at a wall, I don't care what it is. If I didn't have that little pocket of time for myself, I was an animal.
Yes. Yes. So yes, we are the same Z's there. Same. Absolutely. So, that's what works for me right now. And that's because, so right now I only have one in the house. She's 13. And, but I get up at 4 because my husband gets up at 5, and that's a new thing for him. And he wants to run on the treadmill and he wants to do his thing. But when I was getting up at 5 and he was getting up at 5, all of a sudden he's in my space.
Yeah, no. Mm-mm.
So I have adapted to make it work for me, so he can have his morning routine proper, and I'm certainly not going to begrudge anyone else their morning routine. So yes, that's all that works. And then I wake up so the kids get up and they're on their own because they're old now. My youngest is 13, but then I wake the dog up at 7, and then we go for a walk. And then so all of the things happen, but in order for me to do the things that make me feel grounded and centered, I do that.
And I'm wondering if you could talk about this, because for me, so much of what you're saying is also about communication and how we communicate with the people in our lives. Because I remember, like, obviously when COVID happened, so my husband always traveled for the better part of our marriage. And like up into COVID, he would either be on the road or he would be up and out the door. So we didn't really have that bumping into each other in the morning. It was more like my concern was always about like the kids, right? Like how was I that that was the dynamic. And then all of a sudden when COVID happened and we were all home and he was home, and I'm not used to like waking up and having a full on conversation right out of the bat. And I'm an extrovert, people, like, spoiler alert. But in that first, like I said, 30 minutes, like, don't talk to me. Like, I just want my coffee and quiet time. And he didn't know that. Right. And so I had to actually, I was getting annoyed at him because he's like chatty Cathy having a conversation. And I'm like, dude, back the truck up. But he didn't know. So I had to have this conversation with him about like, I just really need some quiet time, because not everybody, you know, can adapt and say, okay, sometimes you are bumping into each other at the same time. You don't always have the luxury of saying, okay, well, I'll adapt my schedule. So I'm wondering how you work that into either your personal life or even professionally with using the communication piece to explain what it is that you need in that moment.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So it's interesting. I've heard you say before that when people ask for help, sometimes they just say, I need help. And they're expecting the other person to kind of read your mind and understand what that help looks like for you. The best thing that you can do is to know yourself really well first before you bring in the other components, because they're variables you just can't control. Especially if you're going into a work environment and the lady in the cubicle next to you chews with her mouth open, like you have to know yourself really well first, um, in order to then carefully either craft out alone time, quiet time for yourself, even if that means that maybe you're shifting where your morning coffee journaling setup is. Maybe it's no longer at the kitchen table. Maybe you're going into the dining room and shutting the door, or you're going into a specific corner of the house, and creating that. So it's better at first to figure out what works for you and then protect your boundaries rather than trying to enforce another variable that you really can't control.
Yeah, no, I like that. And the one thing is I just keep thinking, and to play devil's advocate, is when you're at that point, that bubbling over point, and you're exhausted and you're overwhelmed and you're frustrated and you feel like you've been on this ongoing treadmill, oftentimes you like lose sight of what you even do want or who you even are. Like, how can I, that open-ended question of like, how can I help you? Like, I've sat with women and men, but a lot of my clients are women where, they're stressed and maybe it's their physical clutter and whatnot. And I'm like, okay, so how can I best, I always ask the question, how can I best help you? And I can't tell you how many times people are just like, I don't need, like, they don't even know how to answer the question because they're just so burned out, so overwhelmed. And so it's scary when you are sitting there, like looking in the mirror, as you're saying, and saying, know yourself and know what you want, because whether it's, I've been spending the past however many years catering to everybody else's needs, I've neglected my own for so long, I don't even know what they are, or I'm just so tired, I can't even think about what it is that I want. So I think that even just that first part of it is such an important, but maybe one of the hardest steps in this journey towards a slower living.
Yes. So if I could gently suggest journaling,
Mhm.
um, I have a daily worksheet. So it's stephanioday.com/daily.
Okay.
And it's a guided worksheet. And that's because when many people journal, all of the stuff in their brain they think needs to get out into the journal. And yes, maybe if you're in a bad mood and you're raging and you need to get it out, sure. But we're setting yourself up with a purposeful life that you want to live with intention in a way that feels good in your body. And the first question is, how do you want to feel today? And sometimes you want to feel productive. Sometimes you want to feel calm. Sometimes you want to feel at peace. Sometimes you want to just feel okay. Sometimes you might want to just feel better than yesterday. And there's no right or wrong. But when you start your day with that simple question, how do you want to feel today?
Mm.
And then we build out the different components of your life. So the coaching clients that I work with, we go through my Simple Shortcuts to Peace program. And in it, the idea is to get to the top of the
Yeah, we're going to
pyramid.
talk. Yeah, we're going to talk about that. We're going to actually, this is a perfect spot for us to just take a quick break. When I come back, that was literally my next question is I want to dive right into that you call it the peace pyramid, I believe, and get into that. So just sit tight and we'll be right back. All right, Stephanie. So I cut you off, but
No,
I
you're good.
knew, but this is something that I think again is so important. And I know that you do this and I wanted to give you ample time. So you have what you call this peace pyramid, which are kind of your fundamental principles, if you will, that you teach. And I'm wondering if you could walk us through what they are.
Sure, absolutely. So we learned, I don't know, second grade, third grade, that a pyramid is truly the strongest man-made shape function. I am fortunate that I have married a structural engineer, and then my dad was an architect. So I grew up on job sites, and the idea of foundations is just in my DNA. My poor husband cannot walk into any sort of hotel or any public building without scanning and trying to make sure that it's not going to collapse on us. And we live in California, so earthquakes are a thing.
I was going to say.
so so if you can envision a pyramid, the first section that we go over is time management.
Mm,
And for many people, that's where they get stuck. And so, but if you can take charge of your time and really feel like you own your day versus it dictating to you, you get out of that kind of firefighter putting out things all the time, frenzied feeling, and really sort of take charge. So I teach time blocking very similarly to how you teach time blocking. And again, it's honoring your own personal ebbs and flows, your own brain, your own nuances. We were all given a different game board. So depending on where you live, your socioeconomic, your upbringing, your religion, we all are playing this kind of own game with our own game pieces and our own situations. And the only way to win is to do what feels right for you and a system that works for you. And so when I coach, that's what I'm trying to get people to do is figure out their own version of their personal and professional success and what feels good in their body. And absolutely, time management comes first. And then from there, we move on to health. Um, and that's physical health and that's mental health. We talk about hormones. Hormones are a real thing. So if you don't feel super productive on this Wednesday
mm,
and last Wednesday you were superwoman, that's not your fault. You have not
right.
done anything wrong. So, so I mean, what, 30 years, your hormones are absolutely in charge, and not beating yourself up about that is so huge. I grew up like reading Brian Tracy books or Stephen Covey. And guess what? If you are a woman, you are not going to be a businessman. And so you just can't constantly feel like you are a spreadsheet without ups and downs and all arounds, and honoring that and harnessing that is super important. We talk about sleep, we talk about all of the things that I know you do too, Lori, because
No,
in
but I
order,
love it. It's because
yeah,
it's all relevant. Like people, if you neglect that area and you're only looking at a two-dimensional version of what organization looks like, and you're limiting that to a closet or a pantry, but you're neglecting your health, your wellness, your relationships, your spiritual health, whatever it is, like you're leaving some really important pieces of the equation out. And
yeah,
so it is all encompassing.
it is all encompassing. What you just said triggered a joke that I have with some of my coaching clients. A life well lived, it doesn't matter if you have an organized spice cabinet. Like it really doesn't. It's fine.
Yeah, well, again, it's the same that you look at somebody with a big bank account, right? So it's the so what or the so that. Great, you have all this money, it gives you financial freedom, but if you are devoid of relationships and you're depressed and you're alone and you're overweight and you're unhealthy, like that, okay, it's not the end all be all. And that's what I always talk about with organization. Like it's a byproduct. Like, yes, an organized spice drawer is great, but it's too shallow for it to that be that your final destination. That's like a step in the journey. So it's like if my
Absolutely.
spice drawer is organized, it means it's easier for me to find what I'm looking for. I'm not wasting money buying stuff and running to the store to buy stuff that I already own. And I also don't, if my spice drawer is organized, I don't have people calling me going, where's the garlic? Because they know where it is. So there's all of these, what does that represent? Like, so it's not about just having an organized spice drawer. It's so the freedom that comes with it. And I think that's why we're really intentional here about shedding light on all of these other, we'll call them intangibles that you don't see, but that really play
Yeah.
a role into what an organized life, or how I define, I should say, how
Yeah.
I define an organized life. So, okay. So the time management's the first tier or the bottom foundation. Then you have health. And then what's next?
Finances. So
Mm.
so you can't feel calm and at peace if you don't know where your money is going and you don't know that you are going to meet all of your financial obligations. So sort of the end goal and what I teach about is figuring out your fire number. So that's financial independence, retire early. You don't need to retire early. So I throw in a
Oh,
B for,
are you part of the fire movement?
so I've always intuitively known I don't like to work. Um, so yes, but I throw in a B for fiber because one, you can always have more fiber in your diet, but
Yeah.
also so the financial independent before retiring early. Like figure out
Gotcha.
what it is, figure out what your number is,
Yep.
figure out when you can, and then you get to decide, because once you have that financial independence, you get to decide on purpose and with intention what feels good to you. If you're enjoying your day
Sure.
to day and enjoying going to work, go for it. That's
Right.
great. You're just putting more logs on the fire.
Yeah. Yeah. That was
Yeah.
just a quick sidebar, people. We had talked about a while ago. I had a friend of mine that was on the show, and we were talking all about getting out of debt. And then she had become part of that whole fire movement, which is all about that financial freedom. And, obviously financial clutter is another huge pocket that we talk about, and how it weighs us down and how it shows up in our lives. So I love the fact that you dedicate a rung on your pyramid um, to finances, because it is, again, you talk about stress, you talk about anxiety, you talk about the intentionality, all of these things of how not having a good grasp on that can really ripple into so many other areas.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. Agreed.
Okay. Go ahead.
No, so just moving then on to
Yeah.
the next sort of section it is organization. So that's when most people find me, they're looking to figure out their meals, so they'll find me through the Crockpot site, or they'll find me through organization. So I have 7 chores that in one of the books, it was Totally Together: Shortcuts to an Organized Life. I have a daily planner where the planner is filled in for you. So you just have to check off what you need to do.
Doesn't get much more simpler than that, people. That's it. That
Yeah.
is, yeah.
Yeah. So we go through the daily chores, and then I have the PROM method of decluttering, which is purge, remove, organize, maintain. And
I'm writing it down, people, if you see.
Yeah. So
Purge,
well, and
remove,
it's funny
organize,
because and
maintain.
maintain.
Okay.
Yeah. So I always joke that you do not need to like dance to the 80s and put on a strapless ball gown unless you want to.
Yes.
But but taking the time with intention. And I think that's uh the intentionality part is so huge. Like I'm at the point where in our life that stuff doesn't come into our house unless I know where it's going to live.
Sure.
If you're not there yet, then let's figure that out and get to that point. But we're in a place where I can set a timer for 10 minutes and we can reset the living spaces of our life very easily because everyone knows where the shoes belong, where the backpack goes, how the mail gets processed. All of the things have systems that we've created. I mean, I've been married 25 years and my youngest is 13. So a lot of it in the beginning was trial and error of trying to I'm going to use the word control, but only for lack of a better word, of to control the different variables in the house that we had to have a system. Before having kids of my own, I ran preschool centers. And if you ever go into a preschool center or a kindergarten classroom, all the teacher needs to do is say, okay, it's cleanup time. And the kids all spring to action because they know where everything belongs.
Yep.
Like it's not an issue. Like the scissors go there, the glue sticks go here. It's not asking the teacher or asking mom, where does this go? All of the people can do all of the things. And so that's what we've tried to instill down to labels at times to help the kids out.
Well, I do that too. I mean, I do it in my own house and certainly, for our clients as well, because it goes back to, and I love that you said, you don't bring things in if you don't know where it's going to go. And I think that also to me aligns with that slowing down because so many people, again, our brains and our bodies are on the go and we're functioning almost on autopilot and you're running through Target or you're running through the grocery store and we're not slowing down to really think about where am I going to put this or do I really need this? And we're just reacting. We're just doing because we think we don't think we have another option. For a lot of people, it's like, well, this is just what I do. Or this is what's been taught to me. This is the behavior that's been modeled for me. And so that's your norm, right? Because that's all that you've ever seen is crazy Harry working, in the 11th hour, as opposed to taking that time on the front end to be more intentional about it.
Yeah. No, it's absolutely true. And it goes back to what we were talking about of that feeling when you feel like you're behind, you have this frenetic energy where you have to do things faster. And if you're doing things faster, a lot of times you're a little sloppy. And then you
100%.
have to and then you've got to go back and clean up your mess. But like even something as simple as when you're cooking dinner, if you're paying attention, and wash the cutting board when you're done chopping the avocado versus just letting it sit there in the sink, because we all know if something's in the sink, other people think it's a green light to put more things in the sink.
Yes. So what's the top of the pyramid?
Sure.
Where are we aspiring to reach?
So we're it's peace. So after organization, it's relationships, and we already touched on that you've got to know yourself first before you bring in other people. And then when those components are in place is when you have the ability to kind of feel calm and content. And what we're trying to achieve is this feeling of climbing into bed and like, today was a great day. I rocked it. Like I did the things. I did the things.
Mhm.
And tomorrow's another day. Not behind. Plenty of time. Um, it's gonna be okay. I like to say often that if we're lucky, life is long. And sure, you can live your life with the idea of you're gonna get hit by a bus when you step off the curb tomorrow. But that's not a fun way to feel. Like I've
Right.
got to cram all this in case I get hit by a bus tomorrow. No, let's not plan on that. Let's plan on 80s, 90s and feeling good in your skin and feeling good in your body and cultivating the relationships with these people that you have in your life and turning out capable adults who then can live life on their own and that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I also think that you can share that mindset going back to kind of like the lens in which we all see the world. So you could also approach it from like, we don't know what tomorrow brings. So let's make the most of like, let's be intentional with the choices that we make and not procrastinate because of that, right? For that same reason. So I think you can look at it both ways and still come to the same conclusion of like, if these are the principles that we want to live our life by, or these are the important call them your core values, or these are the different areas that I want to focus in on and really spend intentional, meaningful, whatever. How am I going to do that? Because it doesn't just happen. There's a level of intentionality. I mean, some of it you could just step into for some people, but ultimately from a sustainability, we need to kind of craft that life. So if somebody's listening out there and they're like, I feel like a hot mess, or I feel completely disjointed in so many areas. And this all sounds great. The thought of like slow living, intentionality, building out all these areas, it just seems so unattainable. Aside from working with you, which is a given, right? And we'll link to all that. Where do you suppose or recommend that they start?
Yeah. So unplugging as much as possible. So
Yeah.
turn off the noise and the nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
Just turn it off because so if we use the acronym for slow living, which is simply look only within, I
Mm-hmm.
truly believe when you unplug and you start asking yourself good questions, your subconscious will bubble up with the answer. And you can call it the voice of God, you can talk to the universe, you can from a psycho babble, it's your subconscious, whatever feels good to
Sure.
you, follow that, pay attention to that. So what is my body trying to tell me right now? And then just go quiet. Don't scroll. Don't Google it. Um, and she'll tell you, you need to drink more water.
Mm-hmm.
You need to stop with the wine. Like she will tell you what she needs. With the fear of missing out, which is such a big thing. I sort of, with my children, told them that we don't do that anymore because the kids were saying, "Oh, I have FOMO for this. I have FOMO for this." I'm like, "No, FOMO. Figure only myself out. That's what you need to do. Stop it."
Yeah. Yeah.
So, so so try as hard as you can to in the morning to center yourself and stay calm before you start to consume, before people start telling you what you should be doing or what you're missing out on, or you suck if you don't do it this way. None of that is true. So if you are a fan of journaling or want to learn how to do it, I highly recommend just giving yourself 10 minutes while you're warming up in the morning and drinking your coffee to set yourself up and just ask, how do I want to feel today? What can I do today to make me feel good? And then just go quiet and see what comes up for you.
And I love all of that. And I love the fact that your downloads, your worksheets gives you those guided prompts, because I think for some people it's really hard to just come up with that on your own if it's something that is not something that you're used to. And so having those prompts to lead you on the path to start the conversation, I think is just awesome. I absolutely love that. Where can our listeners find you? Where can they learn more? Obviously, we'll link to all of this in our show notes, but aside, we know that you have a podcast, the Slow Living Podcast. Where's the best place for them to connect up and do
Sure,
all the things?
absolutely. If you're a podcast listener, and you must be if you're listening, it is the Slow Living Podcast. I'm Stephanie O'Day. You can find me at stephanieoday.com. I'm on Instagram at Stephanie O'Day, Facebook, all the things. We do have a Slow Down Society Facebook group. We'd love to have you. But really, I'm just so thrilled to be here with Lori. I think
You're so
you're
sweet.
wonderful, and the work you're doing is really very beneficial. And just taking the time to listen to a podcast such as this, you're already so much farther ahead than you think you might be because you're doing something on purpose, all for yourself. And that's a big deal. And you should really give yourself gold stars for that.
I love that. I absolutely love that. All right, we're going to take one last quick break, and then we're going to come back and just do our wrap-up questions with Stephanie. So sit tight. All right, Stephanie, this is great. I could talk to you all day. You're obviously a writer.
So there were two kind of instrumental books for me as I was kind of transforming into a full-fledged grown-up lady. So one was Brian Tracy's 21 Success Secrets of Self-Made Millionaires. And I had kind of decided at a young age, and by young age, I was a young mom. So I had my first when I was 24 and a half, 25-ish. I knew that in order to make it in the Silicon Valley area, we needed to do the things that needed to happen in order to get our finances in order. So I read all of Brian Tracy's books, and I read those 21 Success Secrets of a Self-Made Millionaire, and I printed out the checklist, and then I put it away, and then lived my life and did all the things. And then when I fast forwarded about 10 years, I found it in an old journal, and I realized, huh, Adam and I have done all of these things.
You did.
And
I love that.
And it was just so neat. Like, oh, we do take care of our bodies. Oh, we do take track of our finances. Oh, we are constantly learning. Like all of the things we did, and it was just really gratifying. And so it's a short read, it's a good read, it's a great kind of life lesson. Some of it, if you are in the very busy early stages of new parenthood, aren't applicable,
Right.
because you're still trying to do all of the things all of the time. But just having them sort of there in the back of your brain is helpful. And then the other book that I keep recommending right now is fiction. And I don't read very much fiction because I feel like I need to be productive all the time. And that is something I'm working on, of giving myself grace that I deserve to have fun. I deserve to celebrate my wins. I deserve to lean into just literally turning my brain off and enjoying life. So we had a beach vacation booked, and I went onto Amazon and I typed in, what should I read on my beach vacation? And what popped up was Emily Beach. I think it's her name. The book's over there, but it's called Beach Read.
Oh, well, there you go.
And yeah, and
that's,
in it,
that's some SEO right there.
No, totally. So it checked off all of my wants and needs for a beach read. It had romance, like very Hallmark-esque romance.
Okay.
The main characters happened to be authors, so that really made me feel good. And then there was a little bit of cult talk in it, and I'm fascinated by cults, and I can't
Who
seem to get
isn't?
I know.
Who doesn't love learning about a Nexium or,
I know.
you know, like, come on.
I know my friend Jennifer told me about the Nexium cult, and then I ended up in this.
That's a whole rabbit hole.
Oh, I loved it. I loved every bitty bit of it. So I guess the idea of blindly following anything without questioning fascinates me. So this book checked
Checked all
off
those boxes.
all of those boxes, and I enjoyed it.
I love it. Okay. And then our last two questions, which you know, as a longtime listener, we ask every guest in this particular season of your life, where do you feel that you are the most organized and where do you feel like a little bit of a hot mess?
Yeah. So I feel pretty good. I like I like our day-to-day life. I really do. I feel like in some ways we won the lottery, and I wouldn't change my marriage. I wouldn't change my kids. I wouldn't change our house. I wouldn't change the dog. Like I like all of the things. I am a hot mess with living in the here and the now. And it's something I really need to still pay attention to. And again, back to needing to feel productive in order to earn my gold stars, um, which is why the beach read was so good.
Yeah.
But my youngest is 13. She's still here. She's still here in the here and the now. But because I'm a forward thinker.
Well, I was going to say, do you know your Enneagram type? Do you know what you are?
So I know human design, I'm manifest generator. I feel like my friend Sandy told me I was a 4 and a 7. I did it at one point.
Okay. Well, you can't have somebody else telling you. Well, and the reason why is I ask is because, and you said this earlier, I don't remember if it was before we hit record or after, but you were saying you're a planner, forward thinker. So within the Enneagram framework that I do a lot of talking and teaching about, there is different orientations to time. So each Enneagram type is oriented one of three ways, either past, present, or future. And so they're kind of grouped, if you will. There's three that are in each center of orientation. So just by the language that you've been using, it would lend me to believe that you are core Enneagram type, which means there's a little bit of each one of us, but your dominant type is that forward thinking, which is either a 3, 7, or 8. So
yeah. I know 7 sounds familiar because I have done this before. I love all the things.
Yeah.
And earlier you had said that you're an introvert. So I mean an extrovert. I keep testing as INFJ, and I do it like every 3 or 4 years. People don't believe that I'm an introvert, but I am. And so when we are done here, I will go walk Sheldon and I will calm myself down and I will do some yoga because this took a lot out of me.
I was going to say, well, that's my husband. He's an extroverted introvert, right? Like people would not picture him. Actually, I'm the only extrovert in my house. I'm surrounded by introverts in my house. And sometimes it's annoying because I'm like getting my energy from people and they're like, oh my God, I can't. There's too many people. I need to recharge. All right. Well, I think we've covered all of our bases. We know where people can go. I loved everything about this conversation because again, it really at its core is everything that we're teaching here about being intentional in all aspects of our lives and why we do it and how to do it. And I love your work. And so I'm going to encourage everybody to check out your podcast and obviously go and, go to your website and check out all the things. So thank you, Stephanie, for being here and for also being a listener. I so appreciate that. If you are new to our show, welcome. We love that you're here. We've got a huge back catalog of all kinds of topics. So make sure you hit the follow button or subscribe wherever you're watching or listening and check out all the stuff that we have. And we have more stuff to come. And I'm just happy to be able to walk with you guys through your journey to having your own organized life. So until next week, I'm Lori Palau. Peace out. Thanks for tuning in. If you like this episode, please spread the love and share it with your friends. And if this is your first time joining us, make sure to click the subscribe button wherever you are listening so you never miss an episode. And while you're there, please leave us a review so other people know that our show is worth the listen. You can also find us on YouTube and Instagram at This Organized Life Podcast. And if you'd like to connect with us, you can head on over to our website at simply the letter B like boy organized.com, which is filled with tons of resources, including free downloads, checklists, links to our amazing organizing partners, and all of our digital offerings. I'll see you next week for another episode of This Organized Life.